So again, when I was talking about the Indian payroll, so I talked about the payroll process, and I talked about this equation, payroll equation, like your net pay is equal to gross income minus gross deduction. Then when I was discussing about the regular income, as I have talked about, as per your CTC structure, there are certain component which you will be getting every month. Okay, like your basic HRA, education allowance, certain component you'll be getting every month. And allowances, again, as you have already mentioned, it can be your HR allowance, it can be education allowance, it can be dearness allowance. Mostly dearness allowance is paid to the public sector companies, most government organizations. So those kind of allowances you'll be getting. And also we talked about LTA, which is also a kind of allowance. Okay, and similarly we have something called one-time payment and benefit. Okay, what is this? Any guess which info type generally we use for one-time payment or benefit?
One-time payment.
Which info type we use in payroll? If you do not remember, I can answer it.
I'm thinking actions, sir. 0000 actions. I'm thinking.
No. I'm talking about the payment. One time there is a specific info type which is used for not only for Indian payroll, any other country payroll as well. We have that is for one-time payment. There is something called recurring payment. We have a specific info type for that.
0014.
Yes, exactly. So 0014 is the for recurring payment. Suppose there is a certain amount we are going to pay every month. Let's say you are paying fuel allowance to the employee, or any kind of travel allowance you are giving to the employee, or any. So for every month basis you are giving that. So that would be an example of recurring payment. If it is a one-time payment, it's like a kind of a, suppose there is a festival. Nowadays a festival season is coming up. Durga Puja, your Diwali and all. So in those cases,
yes,
some of the organization, they give one-time bonus. So in those cases, either you can pay through info type 15 0015, or suppose if you would like to pay it outside the payroll run, we have another info type called 0267. Okay, just I'm typing out both the info type for your. You can go to the system and hire an employee, and you just check those info type. Okay, well, that is for 0015 and 0267. Okay, so you can go through these two info types specifically. 15 is for one-time payment as a part of your regular payroll run, and 0267 is a off-cycle payroll run. Suppose you would like to pay that outside the salary, not in the part of salary. Okay, so that you can also as a one-time payment. So one-time payment can be of two types. It can be part of your salary, then it is a through, you have to pay through info type 15, or if you are paying it outside the salary, then you have to pay it through info type 267 or off cycle payment. That is clear? Are you clear on this? These two info types, 0015
yes,
and 0267. Okay. So this is regarding your basic thing like gross income and salary. Similarly, we do have something called gross deduction as well. Okay, so this is your income, then deduction. So when I say deduction, there can be an example of a regular deduction, statutory deduction, or one-time deductions. Okay, so what can be regular deductions? Can you tell me, like any example would you like to give? What can be a regular deduction?
Provident fund, like and Provident fund, gratuity, ESI, health insurance, like health insurance. These are our monthly deductions, regular deductions.
Professional taxes.
Yes. So your examples are correct, but the thing is, actually we categorize those mostly under statutory deduction. Okay, because these are statutory company related thing. Okay, that we can consider as statutory deductions. Okay, so what is a regular? Even if those are regular deduction, we consider, because these are as a statutory requirement. Mostly we consider them statutory deduction. Regular deduction, I will be giving another example, like it can be your EMI. Suppose you have taken a home loan or a car loan, and it is, suppose it is linked to your salary, for number salary automatic. Any questions, Lakshmi, you're asking?
Not on voice. I can't see your video screen.
Is my voice not clear?
Yeah, your voice is clear, sir. I think she's facing some internet issue.
Network might be some network issue. Okay, okay, no problem.
Yeah, yes, sir. I'll explain her.
Okay, okay.
Right now.
And just to tell today, I'm not going very technical, so I just it's the first session. I'm just clearing the fundamental, what we have understood, what you have understood, and just I would like to have a knowledge check kind of it's interactive sessions. Okay. So when I say regular deduction, it is a kind of a EMI. I can tell you an EMI example, like suppose you have taken a home loan or car loan, and that amount actually it is deducted from your salary. Okay, it is linked to your salary, and from your salary automatically it gets deducted. Okay, so those can be an example of regular deduction, and whatever examples you have given, like a professional tax, if it is applicable, professional tax is not there for every state. Okay, and similarly for ESI, depending upon the eligibility, okay, those deductions, similarly your PF or those income tax, whatever. Okay. So those can be categorized under your statutory deduction because those are regulated by the government. Okay, the government, we have to follow the government principles, whatever. Okay, so that we can call it as a statutory deductions. Oh, okay. Similarly, we have something called one-time deductions as well. Certain times what happens, again, it is an optional one. One-time deduction is like, suppose you have taken a salary advance, okay? And due to some reason at your home, you took in salary advance, and after a period of time, you would like to, your employer would like to recover that. Okay, the salary, that particular amount can be recovered later point of time through then that can be an example of one-time deduction, or any kind of additional deduction you would like to your company is deducting from your salary. Suppose you would like to contribute one time, suppose there is a flood, and to your CM relief fund or your PM relief fund, you are contributing. Okay, that's again a one-time activity, and that can be also considered as a one-time deduction. There is a specific wage type you have to create, and you have to contribute using that one-time deduction wage type. Hope that is clear. You understood one time example? Okay. Suppose somebody is asking to an example of all these 6 components. Okay. Because before we go to the detail about it, like net pay is equal to gross income and gross deductions, I explained like what is a equation of a gross income. So gross income, we have seen there can be 3 types of things. It can be regular income, allowances, one-time payment, and benefit. Similarly, gross deduction will be like your regular deductions, statutory deductions, and your one-time deductions. Okay, so all these are actually the equation of your payroll, I will say. Okay. Simple at a process level, I have explained how this things looks like. Okay, that is a net pay. Now, any questions here before I go to the next one?
No, sir, it's clear.
Okay. So now again, sir, now we talked about what is the payroll processing, what is the meaning of a payroll processing. Okay, so I explained this equation of your payroll. Now we will be going a little bit deeper. So we would like to understand what does this payroll process. Whenever I say payroll processing, what are the things actually goes into the payroll processing part. Okay, so there are certain tasks generally we do whenever you process your payroll and all. Okay, so every any questions, Lakshmi? Okay. Okay. No problem. Then we will be seeing whenever you are talking about a payroll processing, it actually have your payroll administrator. He will be doing certain tasks. Okay, so before I go there, generally, what are the roles you have seen? Any payroll, any comment you like to say, Srikanth? The typical payroll organizations, what kind of roles you can see in a typical organizations?
Payroll roles means like HR.
Yeah, you're coming to closer to that. HR is a role. HR is a role, but again, inside the payroll organization, payroll or department, you will be having certain kind of people. And I'm not talking about people. What kind of roles generally you will be seeing? Generally, in a recruiting environment, you will be seeing a recruiter. There will be a recruiting coordinator, interview scheduler. Those are the different roles. Similarly, payroll. What are the typical roles we suppose you are working for a large organization. I'm not talking about small organization. Suppose it's a large organization. What are the typical payroll roles you will be finding? Any guess? Any, you can answer anything. There is no right and wrong answer. You can tell.
Timesheet department is the timesheet and invoice sending, invoices, generating the invoices, sending.
Yes.
And like after collecting the timesheets, they are calculating the hours.
Yes.
Running the payroll. After running the payroll.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, you're close to that. So whatever you talked about, those time sheet application, or we can call them as a time office administrator or time administrator or leave administrator. Okay, that can be a role which can be played by one or two persons depending upon the organization size. Similarly, for payroll, we can have a person called payroll administrator or payroll manager or a payroll operation manager. Depending upon the organization size and activities, we can have different such kind of roles. Okay, or sometimes payroll specialist, if it is very large organization and you are having a very complex scenarios, you are having a, suppose for a tax purpose, you have a special people that will be talking about, will be responsible for filing all the taxes, statutory things. Okay, so we can have a person called a payroll specialist, tax specialist, or we can have some persons who will be taking care of all the statutory requirement. Okay, statutory compliance related requirement. All those, it can be, I'm not talking about SAP now, like in a typical environment, SAP, or typical
general payroll process.
Yes, there can be a person called payroll compliance manager. Okay, so there can be a person for audit. Okay, payroll internal audit, because there can be payroll audit as well. Every organization they generally conduct. So if there is an external audit, external auditor will come, then you must have some kind of internal auditor as well. Okay, so those are the different types of roles, but it is not mandatory to have all those roles in it, all the organization, depending upon your situations. Okay, depending upon your complexity or the organization size, depending upon your how complex is your payroll structure and all. So you can have a different type, such kind of role, but generally we'll be having generic roles. Like here I have given a generic thing, okay, like payroll administrator, a person who will be administrating, or you're running responsible for running the payroll, or you can call some of the organization, we can call it payroll manager. Okay, so the role name maybe differ, but they'll be doing such certain kind of activities on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so that is an example of payroll. What are the possibilities of different roles in a typical organization for payroll? Okay. And another thing you must have observed, or you might have heard about it. Generally, what happens in an organization, payroll person, they are not responsible for maintaining data. If it is a larger organization, data are always maintained by your HR. Okay, so your HR master data will be maintained by the another person, and payroll manager or payroll, he will be responsible for only specific payroll related data, like your info type 8, 14, 15. Those specific data he will be responsible for, and also some kind of reporting access also he should be having. Okay, but again, depending upon the organization, as I was mentioning. Okay? So when I say payroll processing income, what are the things a payroll processing encompass? So you'll be having your payroll administrator will be accomplishing all the during your payroll activities. And in a typical payroll processing, what will happen? Every organization will be having certain kind of pay policies. Okay, what is an example of a pay policy? Can you tell me, like Srikant, Lakshmi? Like, what is an example of a policy? When I say payroll policy, what can be a typical example?
Based on the organization, they have some giving the benefits, like based on the organization, their health issues, like and what they employees working environment, and
Yes.
the geographical location. Based on that, and statutory regulations, based on the statutory regulations, they are giving some benefits to the employee. Those are the pay policy.
Yes, exactly. So basically what happens, so even if there are some statutory policies every organization must follow, still certain organization, most of the organization, they do have their own policies and procedures, okay, related to your flexible benefits, or it can be leave encashment, okay, or it can be some other related pay component, what will be the minimum salary of a particular grade. Okay, they generally define it, and what can be the maximum salary for a particular grade. Okay, so those kind of policies, everything will be taken care. And generally, the HR payroll manager must define those policies. And as a consultant, because you will be working as a consultant mostly in the typical projects and all, so you have to understand how those policies can be incorporated using your SAP. Okay, so those policies, like you're defining those things, criteria, certain limitations, certain limits actually you have to put. Okay, so like suppose I'm giving an example, for a reimbursement, the maximum limit is so and so. Okay, it can't exceed beyond that for a monthly. Suppose you're putting as also a monthly limit, like it. Suppose you are paying some allowance, a fuel allowance, it should not be more than 1,500 per month. Okay, so those I will be calling it as a policies. And those policy, as a consultant, as a SAP payroll consultant or configurations specialist, you have to configure those things in your payroll. Okay? So that is how I'm just giving a link, connecting link between your typical payroll policies and your how we'll be connecting those things to your configurations. Okay, so that is one criteria. Second one is defining pay slip components. Okay, so in your typical pay slip, you'll be having different components, so like basic, HRA, LTA, whatever components you're doing. At the end of the day, you'll be getting a pay slip in the month end. What are the different components? So that is also considered during your payroll process and during your implementations. And other than that, we have something called collect other payroll inputs from the other service provider. It can be any other vendor or anything. Okay, so those are the different types of things, components will be coming across in a typical payroll process. Okay, finally, what you'll be doing, you'll be releasing the employee salary in your after the processing of the payroll. Okay, then certain other things like your other deposits will happen, TDS, your provident fund, okay, or any of the other tax authorities. So whatever the filing you have to do, that you have to complete. So this is generally that what are the different, suppose somebody is asking a typical, what are the different tasks you do as a payroll officer or a payroll manager in a typical and payroll environment. So you should be able to explain all this. Here I have given an Indian context, okay, and same thing is applicable for other country payroll as well. Suppose you have worked on US payroll, you must have heard about garnishment and all those stuff. Okay, so those things will be coming into picture. So this is understood, right? This is what I mean by, what do you mean by payroll processing encompass. At the process level, you have to how will be linking your process policies to your SAP typical thing. Okay, that I talked about here. Okay? So this is regarding your payroll processing part. And same thing now I'll be explaining in a stages. So in a typical payroll process, we'll be having 3 stages. Okay, one is your pre-payroll activities, which is stage 1. Stage 2 is actually payroll calculations. Stage 3 is your post-payroll process. So here I'm not talking about SAP. So part of the things I'm talking about today is a very generic thing. Okay? And in the upcoming sessions, I'm linking these things to your SAP stuff. Okay? So what do we understand by pre-payroll activities? Mostly your whatever the payroll policy, whatever you have defined, you have to gathering your inputs. Okay, when I say input, all of your master data or your payroll data, time related data, and there should be some validations whether that is properly maintained or not. Okay, suppose I'm talking about PAN number. Okay, there is a specific structure for Indian payroll, the PAN structure, and that must be maintained in particular. Okay, those kind of validations must be there. Okay, so this is the first pre-payroll activity generally we do. And after those data maintenance for every cutoff period, suppose 22nd or 23rd, then you will be starting your payroll calculations process. Okay? Like you will be doing doing a simulation payroll run. Okay, then you will be going for, if everything is correct, if then you will be going for your final payroll or the live payroll run. Okay, so with that, like we'll be having different stages. So there are typical 2 stages. Okay, and simulation and actual payroll run. If there is any error, you have to troubleshoot those error during your simulation run. Okay, so in this way you can proceed after you will be proceeding for your actual payroll run. Once it is done, then you will be proceeding for your other stuff, that is stage 3, which is your post payroll process, which is nothing but Your finance posting, you'll be doing your all the payroll accounting, posting to finance. Then you'll be releasing, transferring to the banks. Again, bank will be then crediting the salary to those all the employees, and it will be debiting your company's account for the entire total employee salary. Okay, so in this, that is a typical process. Then at the end, you generate reports. There are certain standard reports available, like your waste type reporter, or there are how many master data related report, payment deduction report, statutory reports specific to tax, ESI, professional tax, and many more. Other than that, we have reports. We can also create some custom report with the help of your ABAP if the client requires. So this is how a typical payroll step-by-step process, payroll activity. Suppose somebody is asking in general, it is not only for SAP, for any other product as well, whatever the payroll software will be working and will be coming across. So these three things will remain always the same: pre-payroll, actual payroll calculations, and the third is the post-payroll process. Okay. So this is how a typical payroll processing, not only for Amazon in India, but again, it is not country specific. More or less, most of the organization across the globe, they follow typical structure like this. Okay. Any questions here? This is a very simple one.
Yeah, no questions. It's a great.
Yeah. So I think I do have a time limit in this because I do have a 3 person. So I may have to log in again. Okay, just
Okay.
I'm just telling you 2 minutes. After 2 minutes again, we may have to re-log in. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is regarding payroll processing and a typical payroll process, and same thing I have explained here. Okay, so no need to go through it. I'll be sharing the slide with you. Okay, no problem. Okay. So how we'll be doing those stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, all this activity I have explained. And what are the can be the data source? So as I was explaining, the data source, like for an employees, the data source will be like in your ESS. So you understood what is an ESS, Rikant? Like what is an ESS?
Employee self-service.
Exactly.
Employee self-service. Yes.
Exactly. ESS. And MSS. What is an MSS?
Management self-service.
It is a manager self-service rather. Okay, ESS and MSS. That's a typical terminology we use for your SAP. Employee will be able to all kind of tax declaration, reimbursement, everything. He will be applying in his leave. He will be doing it all this from the ESS, and manager will be approving. Manager or the payroll officer, anyone, they will be approving in the MSS portal, or there is okay. So what are the typical data source? We'll be having a data source like employees. From employees, it will be income tax related data, or those whatever. It will be getting, it will taken from the ESS, and it will be getting updated for your info type 585, 586. So for India, I will just giving a chart window. I will just mention. Anyway, I will be coming across that. For India, the series is 580 to 591. Okay, that is a special. This series we have to go through for India specific payroll. Okay, 580 to 591. This 11, 12 info types you have to remember typically. So those are the considered for an Indian payroll. Okay, so whenever you're hiring an employee, you just try to maintain these info types. Okay, then you will be getting through those. Whenever you're processing the payroll, you will be able to understand more detail about it. What are the different all these info types and how it impacts your payroll process. You will be able to understand. Anyway, I'll be explaining all this in details. Okay, how it is going the topic wise. So this is regarding your info types for Indian payroll, and data source, as I was mentioning, employees, HR team also, they will be maintaining some specific data for your payroll, and